Recognize this, ladies and gentlemen. All the water in the world cannot sink a ship unless it gets on the inside of it. All the worry and anxiety and frustration and jealousy in the world cannot sink a person unless it gets on the inside of their mind. What is the reverse of worry? It's thinking about what you want to happen instead of what you don't want to happen. If you were watching a very bad, terrible, gory television program, and you said to yourself, man, I shouldn't be watching this. Boy, this is terrible. I'm going to be having bad thoughts as a result of this. What's the best way to get that out of your mind? Those of you that said turn it off got the second best answer. Those of you that said change the channel got the best answer. See, if you turn it off, what do you think about? You think about what you're just watching. See, the mind is never blank. If it were, how would you know? What do you say there, Cheryl? That takes a minute, doesn't it? So what you do is you change the channel to something more positive and uplifting. You watch that a little while, and then you turn it off. Now, how does a positive person respond? They say, well, that's all right. Back to the drawing board. There's more than one way to skin a cat. What happens is they have developed a positive habit pattern response to life. Now, how did they develop those habit pattern responses? Primarily by the thoughts that they put into their minds. For instance, what do you read when you don't have to read? In your discretionary reading time, do you memorize the newspaper from cover to cover? All the murders, wars, rapes, fires, earthquakes, and storms that have happened the night before? Or do you read something a little bit more positive and uplifting? Maybe a good biography or a little bit of scripture. What do you listen to on the radio when you don't have to listen? Do you listen to the cheating and drinking and somebody done somebody wrong songs? I'm no good without you anyhow, baby. You know what you get when you play a country western music record backwards? You get your wife back, your dog back, your pickup back, and your mama don't get run over by a train. In fact, I heard one the other day, and it says, I'm so miserable since you left, baby, it's almost like you were still here. Can you imagine how much positivity comes out of that kind of negative input? I mean, oh, come on, Ed. You mean to tell me that you feel terrific every single day? Well, of course not. But I always tell myself I do, and pretty soon I do. You see, it's the as-if principle. You act as if you're happy and healthy and successful, and pretty soon you begin to become that way. And a fellow said to me the other day, he said, now wait a minute, Ed. He said, supposing you didn't get into the airport until after midnight last night. You couldn't find a rental car. You couldn't find a taxi. You finally hitchhiked over here. You got over here at 2 o'clock in the morning. All the rooms were rented up. You had to take your bags, walk down the street. Finally got checked in at 3 o'clock this morning. And this morning, at 6 o'clock, John calls you and says to you, good morning, Ed. How are you? You mean to tell me honestly and sincerely you would respond with the word terrific? I said, I mean if you have to put your fingers on your lips and say, terrific. You do it because the men down in the engine room can't see what the captain's having to do up here.
My search led me to the study of the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed. And it was in this field that I came upon a clue which has enabled me to help millions of people to find their earthly destinies. I want to describe my discovery in the simplest terms possible, because it will reveal to you why it is true that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, regardless of how many times you may have failed in the past or how lofty your aims and hopes may be. I caught my first fleeting glimpse of the profound law which provides the means by which we may choose our own purpose in life and attain it while I was being coached by Andrew Carnegie during the organization of the Science of Success philosophy. I had just finished telling Mr. Carnegie that I feared he had chosen the wrong person to give the world the first practical philosophy of personal success because of my youth, my lack of education, and my lack of finances. Well, at this point, Mr. Carnegie delivered a lecture that I shall never forget because it changed my entire life and paved the way for my helping to change the lives of millions of people, some of them not yet born. Let me call your attention to a great power which is under your control, said Mr. Carnegie. A power which is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined. It is the power to take possession of your own mind and direct it to whatever ends you may desire. This profound power, Mr. Carnegie continued, is the gift of the Creator, and it must have been considered the greatest of all of his gifts to man, because it is the only thing over which man has the complete and unchallengeable right of control and direction. When you speak of your poverty and lack of education, Mr. Carnegie explained, you are simply directing your mind power to attract these undesirable circumstances, because it is true that whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. Now you see why it is important that you recognize that all success begins with definiteness of purpose, with a clear picture in your mind of precisely what you want from life.
I believe there's a huge difference in the way that successful people and unsuccessful people think. And I believe that success itself is not some big mystery that people haven't figured out before, even though when we are struggling and we're fighting and we're just trying to make it through day by day and get better and better and better, it can feel like this arduous, unknowable process. But success has been figured out, and we all know it's a mindset game. I mean, most of success is just about how we use our psychology. People succeed, some people do, some people don't, and I think it more comes down to how do we manage our mind and how do we manage our days. And I think that there's a difference between successful people and unsuccessful people in the way they particularly think about approaching something new. You know, I think unsuccessful people, when they have a big dream and they start thinking about what's going to be required to accomplish that dream, they get very limiting in their beliefs about themselves and what's possible. And specifically, they say three types of things. You know, the first thing they often say is, well, I don't know how to do that. So they stop. They say, I don't have those things. So they stop. Or they say, I don't know, I'm not like those people. I'm not like that. And so they stop. But successful people have a different way. They have the same thing. Everybody dreams. You dream, I dream, successful people dream, people just starting out. Everybody dreams. Everyone has a vision. Everyone, if they can just take 5 minutes today and think about their lives, we could all come up with ways to improve our lives and reach another level of success, joy, happiness, achievement, contribution, fulfillment, soul. We can all elevate. But the challenge is that the unsuccessful people, they keep stopping when they think of what they currently know, have, or are. But successful people say, well, I want to do that, but I don't know how to do that. But instead of stopping, they say, well then, my job is to go learn that. They take their current limitation and they put it on their agenda as a job to do, as a thing to figure out, a thing to make happen. Instead of saying, well, I don't have that, they say, well, then my job is to go build that. Or I'm not like that. Then they say, well, then my job is to go become more of that. Become that person who could accomplish those things. When I was starting to do online marketing for the first time, and I don't know how much of my story you know, but when I started doing online marketing, I was literally bankrupt. And I went from a place of bankruptcy to the point where I really committed to becoming successful at it. And in 18 months, I'd made $4.8 million, 4.6 collected. I mean, it was just a huge leap, right, in difference from bankrupt to multimillionaire in the span of 18 months. But what made that breakthrough wasn't that I had new opportunities. It wasn't that I had new technologies. It wasn't like, wow, there's the internet now. Those things were already there. I went from this level of thinking to this level of thinking. I used to say, well, I don't know how to build a web page. So I said, agenda. Figure out how to build a web page. And I spent hours and hours and hours at nights, on weekends from my job, figuring out how to do that. And I said, well, I don't have one of those lists. I don't have any subscribers. Nobody knows who I am. So I said, job, go build a list. Go get subscribers. Go add value and content out at the marketplace and they'll come. I mean, just keep putting stuff out there. And I also didn't say, oh my gosh, well, I have that dream. I can't have that because I'm not like that. Because I wasn't a public speaker. I didn't know how to do video. I wasn't like, well, I'm not one of those video people. Well, I'm not a public speaker. So I said, you know what? I have to go learn that art. I have to go become a better speaker, a better communicator. I have to go become more confident. I have to go become a person capable of doing these things. I have to change myself to get there. I can't wait for circumstances to change so I can have my dream. Then our dreams would never happen. We have to get to the point of maturity in our lives where we say, okay, 2 things are going to change my life. Something new is going to come into my life and make me lucky and blessed, and maybe I can't count on that forever. And maybe now, instead, I have to consciously design my life and say, okay, now, if I want to change, if I want my dream, something new has to come from me. I'm going to become a better person. I'm going to become a person who is more optimistic, who is more confident, who is more driven. Not because I am that now, but because we can grow. That you can become the type of person who you need to be to achieve your ideal life. You can start today living from your highest ideals, your highest sense of self, your strongest sense of self. You don't need permission. You don't need a guy like me to look at the video camera and say, you have now permission. But if you've been waiting for it, you have permission. It's like at some point in your life, you just say, okay, I have permission to become my best self. And by becoming your best self, you start to achieve your best things. You start to contribute better things. You start to become a better human being. You can do that now, today. So next time you're thinking about a big dream, don't think about the things that, well, I don't know how to do that, and stop. Think, I don't know how. So set it up on your calendar to go learn those things. I don't have that, then set it up step by step to go build that. I'm not like that, then set it up step by step to go develop those skill sets and those competencies so you can become that, and ultimately you can achieve that dream. It's there, it's waiting for you. Don't stop.
Now, it sometimes trips me out when I meet 2 people who otherwise have a very similar background, might be from the same industry, and they ask me how to be successful. And typically they'll ask me, what marketing strategies do I need to be good at fill in the blank, X, Y, and Z? Whether selling their widget or their information product or getting a group of people in front of them for a seminar. Now, I'll give both of those people the same advice. What stops one person from taking action and becoming successful, and what helps the other person completely dominate their market within the next few months and become super successful? So I realized there's a difference in how unsuccessful and successful people think. And since I've had both processes happen to me, I used to be the guy who was, well, I was stuck in being unsuccessful because I was managed by 2 things, because there's only 2 things that cause people to be unsuccessful: fear and doubt. And here's what I mean by that. See, successful people, when they want to do something, if they don't know how to do that thing, they don't go, oh, well, I don't know how to do that, now I'll stop and go back to being unsuccessful. Instead, they either go buy the information, they find the information, they research for the information, they become good at it. They become the expert at that thing and apply that information until they get their desired outcome. See, unsuccessful people say, well, all right, I want to write a book. And they realize, gee, I don't know how to submit a manuscript to a publisher. Well, can't write a book. If I can't submit a manuscript to a publisher, I can't write a book. And they stop and they stay unsuccessful. The successful person says, I want to write a book. Gee, I don't know how to submit a manuscript to a publisher. They might do a Google search. They might go to Barnes & Noble and buy a book on how to submit to publishers. They might contact 5 or 10 publishing companies and ask them, what is the best, most effective way to submit a manuscript to you guys to increase my chances of getting published? And they may get rejected 9 out of 10 times. But until they get the answer that they want, they don't quit. See, it's fear and doubt. Fear of the unknown and doubt of yourself, right? Doubting your abilities and your capabilities to be able to take on new knowledge, absorb it, take action, right? I mean, you gotta have some balls to be able to do that. I mean, let's be honest here. Anytime you don't know something and you have to learn something new, well, learning it is one thing. Applying it and taking action to it is a whole other thing. And if you have self-doubt, if you don't believe that you deserve it, if you don't believe that you're worth it, you're gonna stop right there before ever executing it. I mean, think about it. How many people do you know who are full of useless knowledge? Only reason it's useless knowledge is because they have yet to take action on it. As soon as they took action on it, they'd make more money, they'd be more successful, they'd help more people, and we'd have a better society. But instead, they doubt themselves and they doubt their abilities and capabilities, and they stop. Successful people, on the other hand, don't. They still have the fears and doubts. The difference is they acknowledge that those fears and doubts are there. They realize that they were meant to be successful. They have self-esteem, and they move on to that next step of not only gathering the information and knowing it. With me. If we have a good deal and we have a good vibe together, you can stay with me and we'll make another record. If not, you're free to leave. And he went completely against the grain and he won Janet Jackson. And that was the turning point for Virgin Records and for his label. He knew what he had to do, and he took action even though he knew that his odds of failure were great. And in fact, before signing Janet Jackson, there were 4 other big names that he wanted to sign that he lost millions of dollars on while trying to lobby and win them onto his record label. See, no one ever talks about their failures, but I promise you, every successful person has had multiple failures. I've gone literally broke by putting 2 credit cards together, buying a whole bunch of supplements, and trying to sell supplements online by stuffing a whole bunch of supplements in my spare bedroom, hoping that I could sell them on the internet. This was back in 1999, before Google really was around to help with search engine optimization. I could have stopped and I could have gone back into the gym and become a personal trainer, or I could have said, I'm gonna make this internet business thing work if it kills me. That's exactly what I did. I got pretty close to dying several times. I remember pulling many late-nighters. I remember trying to learn how to be a software programmer so that I can create an online software program and launch it. When I realized software programming wasn't for me, I found a way to max out my credit cards again to get my first software program online and selling where I could start making money. So understand that if you don't have the capabilities, you could buy it, you can seek it out, you could get that knowledge from a bookstore, from the internet, from a mentor somewhere. But once you get that knowledge, man, you've got to do something with it. You got to take action. And when you fail, and you will fail, the road to success means that you've got to get back up and take action again until you find the thing that works. And that is the only difference between how successful people think and how unsuccessful people think.